Okay, you ready? Hey, team. Welcome back to another episode of the Jenn Commandments podcast. I am your host, Jenn Wien. I'm an engineer currently working in Wisconsin. I grew up in the Chicagoland area and I went to college in Michigan. Hey, how are y'all doing? Today it is currently the day after Valentine's Day. So I hope that you spent your day filled with love and light in any capacity. I I went to, what did I do? I went out and then I went to Joann Fabrics. I heard that they filed for bankruptcy. So I was like, I wonder if they have any deals. So I went there and they did. It doesn't say that it's going out of business, but basically everything's on clearance. So I'm whatever. They had this 20 pack of canvases, which is like ridiculous. No person needs 20 canvases at once, but they had them on sale for like $35 or something. So I was happy with that. I got them because I think that's usually like, I don't know, between 70 and $100, but super fun, super cool. And then I got a heart pizza from Pizza Hut. And then I went home. I ate. I don't know. I had myself like a nice little night. Very grateful, very happy with that. And I watched a lot of media this week. Oh, I watched a lot of new media this week. I watched HBO Max or just Max. I don't know. Max released a new Diddy documentary. And I watched that, and that was it was a heavy week, sort of. I've been deep in thought all week, and I watched that. So heavy. It's hard to even. I think I'm gonna watch it again because I need to consume that sort of thing. I'm like, I don't want to consume traumatizing media, and then I'm like, I should watch that more than once. But I think for me, the first time I watch a piece of media like that, I can't get over just like the harshness of it. And now I would like to be able to view it for real, where I'm like, okay, I don't know. I would like to watch it again just to like, one, I think it's good for like the algorithms and shit. Like, I think that these women deserve to be heard. Um, and women and men deserve to be heard. Um, and so I will do whatever I need to do to help that, you know. And so, yeah, I don't know. I can't even speak on it right now. I don't really have any coherent thoughts because the first time watching it through, I was just like, you know. Um, so yeah, that I watched that this week. I also watched a video about. Okay, so the Super Bowl happened. Last time we talked was last Saturday, so the Super Bowl hadn't happened yet. What an exhausting week for media, you know. We had to update our phones, and then that shit said Gulf of America. Like, we had ignorant people talking about Kendrick Lamar. It was just like an exhausting week, media wise. And yeah. So I wanted to, before we get into today, we're going to talk about Marsha P. Johnson. But before we get into that, FD Signifier, who we talked about during the Kendrick episode, he posted this article that he liked, and I also really like it. And uh, that is by Ajami Umi, and it's called Kendrick Lamar, Capitalism and the Struggle for African Liberation. It is on hoodcommunist.org. And also, if you got triggered when I said communist, it's not a bad word. Relax. That's American propaganda working against you. And not to say that it's the answer, but also it's not a bad word. So, like, if you noticed your heart rate spike when I said communist, think about it. Just think about why. Anyway, okay. What makes a revolutionary Pan Africanist perspective much different from the other takes in our focus on the complete and uncompromising liberation of the masses of African parentheses, Black people scattered and suffering all around the world? Along with that, it's our unapologetic centering of the continent of Africa under a revolution that brings a unified scientific socialist development in Africa, no matter what language we speak, what faith we practice or don't practice, and where we were born. For a large number of Africans in the US, Kendrick Lamar's presentation during the Super Bowl was inspirational. Most Africans see it this way because the mass collective struggles of the 1950s and 60s, which we are going to get into with the Marsha P. Johnson episode, has given way to the individualistic and idealistic approach to interpreting our place in the world we exist in today. In other words, most Africans in the US see progress today as it being measured upon our individual abilities to advance within the capitalist system. Since the capitalist system exploits and oppresses the African masses, it's obviously controlled by the forces who don't want Africans to see it as the enemy it is. As a result, we are conditioned 24/7, 365 to see our entire existence stemming from the existence of the system. So anyone who has the appearance of rising within this society is viewed by many of us as defining success. Or it can be said that we believe that our success is defined by the degree in which the system that oppresses us permits our accession within it. Under these dysfunctional circumstances, when Africans in the US participate in highly financed movies, television, sports, music, etc., it's seen through these lenses. And because of capitalism's vicious exploitation of Africans every day, most Africans enjoy seeing images of themselves appearing to rise above the obstacles that prohibit so many of us from having any opportunities whatsoever. So, with this context established, we have nothing negative to say about Kendrick Lamar's presentation. We say that because we believe that the masses of people make history, not individuals. Oh, we say that. We say that because we believe that the masses of people make history, not individuals. We also believe, as Ahmed Sekou True and Emil Carr Cabral told, let me look those up actually. Let me see who they are. Can you say it out loud for me, please? He was a Bissau Guinean and Cape Verdean agricultural engineer, political organizer, and diplomat. He was one of Africa's foremost anti colonial leaders. He was also a Pan Africanist and intellectual nationalist revolutionary poet. Okay. So they're, okay. Damn, we should do research on them next week. Okay. Put a pin in that. Okay. Anyway. We also believe, as they said, culture is the tool of the oppressed. Culture is the tool of the oppressed to achieve their liberation. This means that culture belongs to the people, not individuals, and certainly not celebrities who serve as court jesters to capitalism. People can debate what Kendrick was trying to say or not trying to say all day. But our point here is that as long as the masses of African people are disorganized and disunified, the issue cannot be what these articles are doing or not doing. The issue has to be what the masses of our people are doing or not doing. In the 1960s, when mass movements for African liberation were common all over the world, the level of consciousness reflected the energies of those movements. As a result, the artists were forced to raise their consciousness in order to be relevant to what the people wanted to hear, see, etc. By the 1980s, when this individualist idealism became dominant, those same artists shifted gears and made art that reflected that reality. Examples of this in the US is music made by artists like James Brown in the 60s compared to the 80s. In the 60s, at the height of the mass struggle, James Brown was singing, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and Proud." In the 1980s, that same James Brown was singing "Living in America." So whether you like Kendrick Lamar or not, whether you thought that what was said was relevant or not, whether the individual's takes on this area. Oh, fuck. Ah! Whatever the individual takes on this area, for those of us genuinely concerned for and working for African liberation, the only relevant question is what will art look like when the masses of African people are organized? Until that happens, it can never be about Kendrick, the individual, or Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg the year before, etc., because without mass consciousness and movement, no matter how great the individual performances are, none of what's presented sticks. In 2016, Beyonce led a Super Bowl presentation that appeared to pay tribute to the Black Panther Party and Malcolm X. 2 weeks after that Super Bowl, it's as if thousands of people were inspired by her performance to join and or start organizations that would carry on the work of those African organizations and individuals she represented on the stage. Unfortunately, it's the same reality today. In another 2 weeks, everyone will have pretty much forgotten whether Kendrick Lamar was making a statement about mass incarceration, against Trump, for reparations, whatever. And slim to none people will be inspired solely by his performance to dedicate their lives to this struggle, designed to facilitate our collective forward progress. The change we are fighting for will not happen through soundbite capitalist culture. And unfortunately, Lamar is incorrect in saying during his presentation that the revolution will be televised. Revolutions are about mass engagement. Television stations set up and facilitated through the capitalist system will never air propaganda that promotes revolution, just like the American Broadcasting Company will never air a performance that has traction around a truly revolutionary message. Again, this is no critic of Lamar. Whatever he tried or didn't try, the onus is on us to get engaged, to hold all of these artists accountable to the integrity and culture of the masses of our people. The culture belongs to us collectively. As Tour and Cabral said many times, our culture has never been an individual commodity to be bought and sold to its highest bidder. Until enough of us understand our collective responsibility to advance our culture, and that the only real way to do that is by advancing our people against this capitalist system that continues to hold us down, all we will ever be left with is individualism. And individualism has never, in the history of human existence, solved any collective problems. Next steps: stop talking about what Kendrick Lamar, Snoop Dogg, Donald Duck did or didn't do, and start talking about what we're going to do and then do it. If enough of us can see the importance of that collective approach to our liberation fight, the art produced will reflect that, and then we really start to see for the first time what true African art and expression is supposed to look like. That was hard to get through, but we got through it. And it's a little inspirational, no matter how much I fucked it up throughout, you know? Um, I thought it was worth reading on here, instead of sharing how I thought it was dope, you know? And I did. I loved the Super Bowl performance. I was dancing the whole time, you know. But I wanted to give another perspective on it. So that's that on that. Now let's get into the topic of the day. Today we are it's blizzarding. It's been a heavy fucking week. It's been dark all week. It's been snowing all week. I've had to deal with ignorant people in comment sections. I haven't had to do any of that. But yeah, I don't know. I have been staying off my phone a lot more. I know that sounds different than what I just said, but I have been on my phone, or like on my phone less, and I've been reading more. I've been focusing on art, which has been super fun. Um yeah, I don't know. I've gotten inspired for like a collection of pieces of art that I could do, but we'll see. I don't know. I Painting is something for me that's hard to get into because I care about being good at it so much, and I haven't practiced it enough to be good at it actually. And so I don't know. That's the struggle I'm dealing with currently with painting. But I would like to get into it, so I will eventually. So that's that on that. Yeah, so today we're going to be discussing Marsha P. Johnson. And if you don't know, Marsha P. Johnson was born August 24th, 1945. And she was a American gay liberation activist and self-identified as a drag queen. She's known as an outspoken advocate for gay rights, and she was one of the prominent figures in the Stonewall Uprising of 1969. So that's just sort of her first little snippet here on Wikipedia. I'm also going to be um, using womenshistory.org, and there may be some other sites we go to too. I would like to do not only, I don't have like a hard and fast script for this week. I would like to talk a little bit about Marsha, and then I would also like to discuss the Stonewall Uprising a little bit. I did watch, she has a documentary. Where is the strap? She has a documentary on YouTube. Let me find what it's called that I watched. And it was all of her friends talking about her. And it was just so beautiful. I really enjoyed watching it. Let me look for it. It's called Pay It No Mind, which was what the P in Marsha P. Johnson stood for. We're going to get into that a little bit. But um, so Marsha P. Johnson will always be known in queer history. I believe, okay, so let's get into a discussion about transness for a second. Trans people have always existed since the beginning of time. And two-spirited, like non-binary people have existed throughout all of mankind. And there's science that proves. Let's get into the discussion of the science behind transness, okay? Because I think that people okay, a common misconception of science is that it is hard and fast. And what I mean by that is it is cut and dry, and it is black and white. Either it is or it isn't. Where science is the whole point of science. I'm a little pissed off, so I'm putting down my laptop for a second. The whole point of science is to disprove the already thought theory. So, if you remember, I don't know, middle school, at the beginning of the science project, you make a hypothesis, right? You go, I think this. And then you write that bitch down, right? And then you create a case study and you go, okay, well, how can I either prove or disprove this theory that I've come up with? And then you do the fucking science project, bitch. And then if it's a really good science project, if you're good at what you fucking do, and you're not maybe, I don't know, sitting on your couch writing comments, you have, and this is classist a little bit, right? But you have a degree, you have multiple degrees telling you that you're good at the shit, right? That you're qualified to be talking about the shit, right? You have taken some of the hardest classes that you can take at the collegiate level, that you can take, period, right? Regardless. To decide if, and then you get other people who are scientists like that, right? You can, and you be like, hey, can you read this fucking lab report that I created? And they're like, sure. And then they either decide to work with you on that fucking project, or they're like, I'll at least sign off on it. And that's how you get a peer reviewed case study, okay? That's how that shit works. You don't have something be peer reviewed unless people who are just as qualified as you, if not more qualified as you, than you, sign off on the shit. Okay. So I want you to take a second, view yourself from outside of yourself, and say, hey, do I have the background knowledge on how science works? Did I get a passable grade in my high school science class to be making accusations about whether science is sound or not? I would just take that into consideration, you know? Um, Anywho, so let's get back into the discussion of. So, anyway, the point I was getting at is science is nuanced, right? So, while the body may create chromosomes in the body or for baby, right? We know that there are malfunctions, there are mishaps within that process all the fucking time, team. There are there are genetic malfunctions that happen. Science is not perfect, and there are outliers. Like, okay, with that preface, right? There are outliers, and also malfunction makes it seem derogatory, and I don't mean for it to be. There are just outliers, right? And also there are times, hey team, guess what? My brain was so stressed out that it thought that shit was happening to it, and it attacked good parts of my brain, right? So let's just put everything into let's just know that the body does weird shit sometimes, okay? So let's talk about the science behind transness. Okay, sorry. That was a long rant, and but it is so infuriating to watch people who clearly don't know what the fuck they're talking about try to have a black and white conversation that clearly is not black and white. And I understand, as a human being, if you're scared of something, if you're not used to something, so it makes you uncomfortable, like, etc. I understand that need to clench in out of, like, need to protect yourself or whatever, but, like, take a moment, like, come on. Anyway, video. Let's do the AI overview. I'm comfortable with taking the AI overview because I just ranted on some shit that I don't have any factual basing, and I'm hoping AI will come through. But also, AI can be. We'll get into coding someday. We'll get into the biases. Coding and AI can be just as bigoted as the people who coded them as well. We can get into that another day, but whatever. It says there is a genetic component to transgender identity, particularly in how the brain metabolizes sex steroids during development. Gene variants can provide insight in the differences between the brain and body in transgender people. Hormones. Hormonal influctuations or imbalances during pregnancy may cause transgender conditions. Atypical level of sex hormones during fetal development may lead to brain structures that differ from the sex assigned at birth. Brain structure. Research suggests that there are links between transgender identity and brain structure. Brain imaging studies have shown differences in brain structure between transgender and cisgendered people. Early and later experiences. Early experiences and experiences later in adolescence or adulthood may contribute to the development of transgender identities. Support from parents and caregivers can positively impact the well-being of transgender youth. There is no single explanation for why some people are transgender. And then they present a video. Should we watch it? Are we allowed to watch it? It's like a 47 clip. I want you all to know that this information is not readily available. And this is scientific information. In theory, this should be taught in health classes, right? In theory, it is just like learning I agree that it should be included in psychology. It is an important part of to not teach about this, something that affects how many how let's see what the percentage of the world is transgender. Less than 1%. I do believe, well, okay. Damn, I didn't know that. Damn, so we talk about shit that's affecting literally less than 1%. I know I shared some shit. I thought maybe that was just the US. Maybe there was, I guess maybe like the US would be like probably where it's the highest. That's the only place where people are free. Not the only place where people are free enough to be, which is that sucks. Gotcha. Okay. So this is something that may not affect, I think, I don't know. I think it's just scientific. I think that's all it has to be, right? There are times where you may not agree with your sexual identity. Like if you between the ages of 3 and 5 experience any of those things, maybe then you should get set up with the guidance counselor in school and you can discuss those things. I don't know why that's a challenging thing. And people think that like it's a choice and it's misguidance. I don't know what that means. I don't know what misguidance is. I, what's misguidance to me is the like I've been made to feel shame about anything that doesn't feel like I fall in line with mass society my whole life. And like, uh, what's the I don't know. I just it's something that I have a hard time understanding. And because the and I was getting at before, like it's talked about it's not talked about a lot ever in your childhood. Like queerness is not talked about in childhood, in school. Like we live in a society where it's assumed that you're straight. I forget the word for that. Where like it's assumed if you're straight, and you're the outlier if you're not. Where like I don't know why we don't just teach sex education or like genitalia education, anatomy, um in a more just objective sense, right? Of like, um these are the genitalia of, because there's also, okay, also I learned, okay, and I didn't know any of this until I went through RA training. So if you don't know this, that's okay. If it's just a matter of like, I I just simply don't have the education on it. I'm not hateful. I'm not spiteful towards the subject matter. I just don't have the education about it, then that's fine. But if you're shown that education, staying ignorant is an issue, right? It's okay to be uneducated, but staying uneducated is the issue, right? So also, there is a difference between sex and gender, okay? We can also look that up so I don't get the wording wrong. So, sex refers to a person's biological characteristics, like chromosomes and reproductive organs, while gender refers to the social and cultural constructs associated with masculinity and femininity, including how some identities themselves and is perceived by others, which can be influenced by personal experience and societal norms. Essentially, sex is biological and gender is social. Now, one more get back, one more devil's advocate, before we move on, to Marsha P. Johnson. Oh my God, I've been talking for 35 minutes and we haven't even gotten into the oh. Okay. Um, this is all pertinent to Marsha P. Johnson, though. All of it. All of it is the work that she did, you know? So we're going to talk about all of it. But I lost my train of thought. I think that we could teach in schools, hey, this is what the organs of male, this is the organs of female. Sometimes there are intersex people. Here's what that looks like, because we're not taught about intersex people at all. And there is a high population of the world that is intersex. 1.7% are born with intersex traits. Intersex people have any gender identity or sexual orientation. Let's, if for the class, if you all don't know what intersex is, it is a condition in which an individual's physical sex characteristics, such as chromosomes, gonads, hormones, and external genitalia, do not fit the typical binary definitions of male or female. So they could have maybe breasts but a penis. Like there are just like different there are different ways to be intersex. So yeah, anyway, let's so that's sort of your gender lesson for the day. Okay, so now that we've sort of discussed gender identity, sex, we've discussed the science behind transness a little bit. We've discussed how our education system doesn't prepare us for that. Our education system is like, sometimes you're gonna fuck men if you're a girl. I was shown a video when I was in 5th grade that was like, sometimes you're gonna get your period and sometimes you're gonna fuck men. And that's that on that. And then when I was a freshman in high school, I watched a video of a woman giving birth. And that's like basically, and like was told like abstinence is the best sex ed, or like the best form of birth control, and then wear condoms. Like that that was the extent of my sexual education. I do see merit in teaching more than, and that's not to I don't see any world where it has to be like you have to be queer. Like it's just like, hey, this is shit that happens in the world. And like, unfortunately, because we sold the American people the American dream, which is like white picket fence, 3-bedroom home, that doesn't exist anymore. And that only existed and worked under very restrictive confines of racism, homophobia. Like it that only works when you're enslaving people. And we still it to the extent that it does work, only works because of the industrial prison complex, you know. So that's that on that. So let's get into Marsha P. Johnson. All right. So we're going to head back to the womenshistory.org. This is Marsha P. Johnson's by Emma Rothberg, PhD. She's an associate educator, digital learning and innovation. It says Marsha P. Johnson was one of the most prominent figures of the gay rights movement in the 1960s and 70s and in New York City. Always sporting a smile, Johnson was an important advocate for homeless LGBTQIA youth, those affected by HIV and AIDS, and gay and transgendered rights. Marsha P. Johnson was born on August 24th, 1945, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Assigned male at birth, Johnson grew up in an African-American working-class family. She was the 5th of 7 children born to Malcolm Michaels Sr. and Alberta Claiborne. Johnson's father worked on the General Motors assembly line in Linden, New Jersey, and her mother was a housekeeper. Johnson grew up in a religious family and began attending Mount Tenman African Methodist Episcopal Church as a child. She remained a practicing Christian for the rest of her life. Johnson enjoyed wearing clothes made for women and wore dresses starting at age 5. Even though these clothes reflected her sense of self, she felt pressured to stop due to other children's bullying and experiencing a sexual assault at the hands of a 13-year-old boy. Immediately after graduating from Thomas A. Edison High School, Johnson moved to New York City with one bag of clothes and $15. So let's unpack that a little bit. Let's unpack all that. She was born in New Jersey. She was born in like a middle class family. And at age 5, she already knew that she liked wearing dresses. I had one of my neighbors when I was like 3 to 5-ish. His name was Jake, I think. I hope he's out in any capacity that he, or I don't know. I haven't checked in on him, but when I was like 3 to 5, he lived a couple of doors down, and his dad was a cop. But he would come over to our house, and he would put on my mom's like heels, and he would put on my dresses, and I loved playing with him. I didn't see anything wrong with that. I didn't know. I don't know. I didn't think of him as a boy, or he was just my friend, and like I enjoyed dressing up in my mom's clothes and putting on her jewelry and like wearing her heels. So I why wouldn't a boy? I don't know. But his dad was very against that. I think he was not allowed to come over. I was allowed to go over there, but like, yeah, I don't know. It, I don't remember if it came to a head or not. I was a kid, but I knew that I loved hanging out with him. So, um, that's but that's just another example of a moment in time where kids, when there's nobody judging them, they're just going to do what they want to do. It's inherent, you know. Um but anyway, and the reason why she stopped was because she got sexually assaulted by a 13-year-old boy. So imagine you just are who you are, and like, that happens. And I think that that happens to kids more frequently than they'll ever admit. And I think it happens to young boys. Obviously, Marsha P is a woman, more than they talk about. And I wish that that conversation came up more. Once in New York, Johnson returned to dressing in clothing made for women and adopted the full name Marsha P. Johnson. The P stood for Pay It No Mind, a phrase that became her motto. Johnson described herself as a gay person, a transvestite, and a drag queen, and used she, her pronouns. The term transgender only became commonly used after her death. According to her nephew, Johnson always maintained a close but fraught relationship with her family back in New Jersey. Damn, what does fraught mean? Let me look that shit up. A Google search, hate to see me coming. Fraught. Of the situation or course of action, filled with or likely to result in something undesirable, causing or affected by anxiety or distress. Okay, so um, so yeah, she tried to be close with them, but it was stressful. And I think something that my therapist and I unpacked this week is that like we're taught that the relationship with your family is supposed to be inherent. We're taught that it's supposed to be easy, and we're taught that like I don't know, that it's important, and it is important. I agree that it's important, but I don't think that it is natural. And I think that in a way to make it healthy for both parties, it can't be natural. And I think that you try anyway. And so I appreciate that they included that. It was not easy to live on the margins. New York State still persecuted gay people and frequently criminalized their activities and presence. Right for LGBTQIA people were limited and sometimes ignored completely. Having difficulty finding employment, Johnson turned to sex work. She was often abused by clients and arrested by the police. She did not have a permanent home during this time, and she bounced around sleeping at friends' homes, hotels, restaurants, and movie theaters. She also found work waiting tables and performing in drag shows. In 1992, in a 1992 interview, Johnson said, "I was no one, nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen." I was no one, nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen. That's so cute. Not long after moving to New York, then 17-year-old Johnson met 11-year-old Sylvia Rivera. Rivera, a Puerto Rican transgender girl, and the two became instant friends. That is an incomplete sentence. It is Rivera, comma, a Puerto Rican transgender girl, comma, and the two became instant friends. What really should have happened is it's okay. Never mind. Rivera later said of Johnson, she was like me critiquing an article that I didn't write that is published in a .org website. Like, they're better at me than me. Like, can I just shut the fuck up? Anyway, I just changed the angle probably. I'm sorry. Um Rivera later said of Johnson, "She was like a mother to me. As Johnson had done for herself, she encouraged Rivera to love herself and her identity. Johnson adored wearing colorful, fun outfits that she made from her finds at thrift stores and discarded items. She was also often seen wearing a crown of flowers." I didn't have a flower crown. I wanted to wear one. But I did sport a Marsha P. Johnson look for you guys. I can include, maybe I'll post a picture of her on the podcast page, Instagram page, so that you can see my inspo. But I did do a Marsha P. Johnson inspired makeup look for you all today. And I wanted to do a flower crown, but the one that I had, I think I threw away or something. But one second, I'm uncomfortable. Are you guys? Wait. Okay. Slay. Okay. You guys are on ring light. um Anywho, so Marsha P. Johnson's life changed when she found herself engaging with the resistance at the Stonewall Inn on June 28th, 1969. So, Johnson's life changed when she found herself engaging with the resistance at the Stonewall Inn on June 28th, 1969. In the early morning hours, police raided the bar and began arresting the patrons, most of whom were gay men. Johnson and Rivera arrived at the Stonewall around 2 a.m., where, Johnson said in a later interview, the place was already on fire and there was a raid already. The riots had already started. There are many competing stories about what Johnson did during the raid on the Stonewall Inn, but it is clear that she was on the front lines. Johnson, like many other transgender women, felt that they had nothing to lose. They were not only angered by the police raid, but also the oppression and fear that they experienced every day. In the wake of the raid, Johnson and Rivera led a series of protests. The raid on Stonewall galvanized the gay rights movement. The first gay pride parade took place in 1970, and a series of gay rights groups, including the Gay Liberation Front, a more radical organization, and the Gay Activist Alliance, a more moderate and focused spin off group, emerged. Johnson was involved in the early days of both, but grew frustrated by the exclusion of transgender and LGBTQ plus people of color from the movement. She actively spoke out about the transphobia in the early gay rights movement. In 1970, Johnson and Rivera founded Street. Oh, sorry, guys, I'm tired. It's okay. I'm gonna make it through. I'm gonna make it through. In 1970, Johnson and Rivera founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, an organization dedicated to sheltering young transgender individuals who were shunned by their families. The two began Star House, a place where transgender youth could stay and feel safe. Star House was of personal importance to Johnson and Rivera as they both spent much of their youth experiencing homelessness and destitution. The first Star House was in the back of an abandoned truck in Greenwich Village. Star House then moved to a dilapidated. What the fuck does that mean? What does dilapidated mean, team? Am I stupid? Do you guys know? In a state of disrepair or ruin as a result of age or neglect. Damn. Which they tried to fix up, but the group was evicted after 8 months. Throughout the 1970s, Johnson became a more visible and prominent member of the gay rights movement. She began performing with the drag group Hot Peaches. She attracted the attention of many, including the pop artist Andy Warhol, who included her in a series of prints in 1975. When I see 1975, I automatically go the 1975. Entitled Ladies and Gentlemen. In an interview Johnson did for the 1972 book, she said her ambition was to see gay people liberated and free and to have equal rights that other people have in America. She wanted to see her gay brothers and sisters out of jail and on the streets again. In another interview, she said, as long as gay people don't have their right all across America, there is no reason for celebration. In 1980, she was invited to ride in the lead car of the Gay Pride Parade in New York City. So, few things in this. Sorry that my reading has sucked. I've been on my hitting the pen a little bit, just so y'all know. And throughout, okay, I really appreciate the inclusion of Andy Warhol in here. So at the time, Andy Warhol. So okay, we'll do a whole episode about Andy someday. He is my all-time favorite artist, probably. Um, and he was just known to be gay. He never came out. He never like he made it in. If the mic just picked up my stomach growl, I'm so sorry. But he really like fit in with the straight crowd. Like they would always say shit like Andy Warhol doesn't make being gay his personal, like he fit in with the straights kind of, but he was also such a pop culture figure, and he never dulled himself down. And you like his art was so, he never allowed fitting in with the straights to for him to step back from standing up for what he believed in, for capturing photos of people like Marsha P. Johnson, you know, being friends with people like RuPaul. Because, like, and not that, like, I don't know how RuPaul identifies. I don't know if she identifies as trans or not. That's not, actually, I don't, let me back up. But I think that this idea that transness is not included in the gay rights movement is crazy, because trans women have stood at the forefront of every gay revolution that we've ever experienced. And so I don't know, that's my feeling about it. That's what else. Star is so cute. Street transvestite action revolutionaries, which is like, when I watched the documentary, it was just everyone who spoke about her in such high and loving regard. They said that Marsha had just a way of saying hi to everyone in New York City, babe. Like, she had a way about her where she could make anybody feel seen in the setting. And she truly made it seem like she cared about what you had to say. She wasn't just asking you how you were doing because that was the polite thing to do. You know, she really gave a fuck about the world around her. Beautiful that she was invited to ride in the lead car at the Gay Pride Parade. That's so cool. Um, Next, let's get back into the article. It says, despite her joyous personality and ever-present smile, Johnson experienced hardship. She never let her personal setbacks stop her advocacy. In the 1970s, Johnson experienced a series of mental health breakdowns and spent time in and out of psychiatric hospitals. She also continued to engage in sex work, not knowing any other way to make money, and continued to get arrested. In 1990, Johnson was diagnosed with HIV. She spoke out publicly about her diagnosis and how people should not be afraid of those with the disease in a June 26, 1999 interview, or 1992 interview. My apologies. Activism is, I'm not super familiar with I'm familiar enough with activism to know that it has anyone who was in my social circle during May to, I want to say it lasted all the way to like October of last year, um, knew that my whole life revolved around Ronald Giglio, which is crazy. He revolved more, like, he took up more brain space then than he ever did back then. And a lot of it, what I heard countless women tell me some of their deepest, darkest secrets, things that some of them maybe had been holding on to since they were 11 years old. And it was my job to source that information and judge it in a way to see what was worthy to be evident. Like, I sent everything to the legal team, obviously, but like when I was posting, like, it was just such a like weird time, and I can understand how it would affect you in multiple year if you spend multiple years where that is your primary focus. And then on top of that, you are dealing with the trauma, the effects of the traumatic profession that is sex work. I can't imagine, you know. So God bless her. And that's facts on God, no printer. On July 6th, 1992, Johnson's body was found in the Hudson River. I'm sorry if you don't know Marsha P. Johnson, and if you're not familiar with her lore, I'm sorry. She was 46, initially ruled a suicide. It was initially ruled a suicide. Many friends questioned that conclusion and suspected foul play. At the time, 1992 was the worst year on record for anti-LGBTQIA violence, according to the New York Anti-Violence Project. Police then reclassified the case as a drowning from undetermined cause, but the LGBTQ community was furious that the police refused to investigate further and that many press outlets did not cover her death. At her funeral, hundreds of people showed up at the church. It was so crowded that people stood on the street. In 2012, the New York Police Department reopened the case into Johnson's death. In 2019, New York City announced that Marsha P. Johnson, along with Rivera, would be the subject of a monument commissioned by the Public Arts Campaign. She built in New York City. The monument will be the first in New York City to honor transgender women. In 2020, New York State named a waterfront in Brooklyn for Johnson. Johnson is also now the subject of many documentaries. She remains one of the most recognized, admired LGBTQ advocates. Sorry, I was on the verge of tears that whole last paragraph. I think that it's just such I hate that this is the theme of the month. Like I'm doing Black History Month. And I want to honor some of the people who really inspire me. And like so much of Black culture is surrounded by suffering. And like that article that we read at the beginning of the episode, like, why is that? Well, like, I hope I cannot wait for a time where we can allow Black art to be impactful in ways other than surrounding their suffering. Because like we've discussed, sort of, like, it is a privilege to not live in survival mode. That is a very distinct privilege that not many people talk about. And when you are faced with oppression, when you're faced with marginalization, your chances of creating a life that allows you to live and step out of your survival mode instincts, I think your chances are lower. And that sucks. And for me, I think equity comes when I think that's equity, is when we get the opportunity that all people have the opportunity to step out of survival mode more, if that makes sense. Because white folk, I think that is the highest privilege of white folk, is that many of them, you are at a higher chance of living a life where you get to overcome the things that you experienced and that your family's experienced. Like that is I think the highest part of white privilege. Whether or not you do that, whether or not you put the work in to do that, is a whole other story, but your chance is higher. So that's that. When that makes me emotional, that is the thought of, you know, she did so much for so many people, and she never got the opportunity, whether it be foul play or not. It's devastating that she'll never get that opportunity to experience that. That's not fair, because she deserves that, you know. Um, so yeah, Marsha P. Johnson. I highly, 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 highly suggest you go watch the the Pay It No Mind documentary that was on YouTube, because it was so beautiful. It was really a culmination of who Marsha was and how much she impacted those around her. You know, there are other documentaries, but that was the one that I watched. So, we had some history lessons today. We had some science lessons. We had me going on some pissy tangents. Yeah, I think that's what I got for today. I'm inspired by Marsha P. Johnson in every facet of my life. I aspire to be kind and happy. I aspire to for people to feel seen in my time with them. Like, I those are all things that I care about, and I don't understand how somebody could look at somebody like Marsha P. Johnson and think that they're doing bad in the world, because so many people and anyone who's interacted with her raves about how what a positive impact that they had by knowing her, you know. So, yeah. Um, if you felt the need to clench in at all during the episode today, I understand. We live in a we live in a society that does not accept trans people. We live in a society where they're seen as less than, they're seen as genetic freaks, they're seen as misguided, they're seen as not worthy of stepping out of being in fight or flight. And I think that if you are marginalized in any way, the best act of retaliation and revolution is happiness. So, chase that, but also get involved if you feel inclined to, like we discussed in that article at the beginning of the episode. So, yeah, that's all. I hope that you liked the makeup look. That's it. Okay, wash your face, drink some water. Try not to let February get to you. It's sort of whooping my ass a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. February's sort of whooping my ass a little bit, but I love you. And I'll see you next week. That's all. Bye.